The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure built from materials older than most civilizations. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated seats, arranged in a perfect circle around a central platform. The chamber had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic politics, and in all that time, no species had ever dared to challenge the council's authority. Today would be different. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood on the central platform, her hands clasped behind her back. She wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, dark blue with silver accents. Around her, the alien representatives murmured among themselves in countless languages. Their translation devices filled the air with a soft hum. Lisa had been on this platform many times before, always presenting humanity's case with patience and respect. But today felt different. She could sense the hostility in the room. The council had made their decision before she even arrived. Council Speaker Zarthon rose from his seat. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow in the chamber's light. His species, the Velic, had founded the council 12,000 years ago. They considered themselves the guardians of galactic civilization. Ambassador Grant, Zarthon said, his voice carrying across the chamber, we have summoned you here to deliver the council's judgment regarding the human colony on New Terra. Lisa remained silent, waiting. She knew what was coming. The council has determined that New Terra lies within the Velic economic zone. Your species established this colony without proper authorization. Furthermore, humanity has failed to pay the required taxes for operating in council space. This cannot be tolerated. Other council members nodded in agreement. Some made sounds that their translation devices rendered as approval. Zarthon continued. Therefore, the council demands the following. First, humanity must immediately evacuate New Terra and surrender the colony to council authority. Second, humanity must pay retroactive taxes for all colonies established in the past 80 years. Third, humanity must submit all future expansion plans to council approval before proceeding. Lisa felt her jaw tighten, but her expression remained calm. Behind her eyes, her mind was racing through diplomatic protocols and potential responses. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this, and if we refuse? Lisa asked quietly. The chamber erupted in what could only be described as laughter. It came in many forms, chirps and whistles and deep rumbling sounds, but the meaning was clear. The council found her question amusing. Zarthon raised one long-fingered hand and the chamber fell silent. Refuse, Ambassador, please understand your position. Humanity has been part of galactic civilization for merely 80 years. You are children playing at politics. The council has governed this galaxy since before your species discovered fire. No one refuses the council. That's not an answer, Lisa said. Zarthon's expression hardened. Very well. If humanity refuses, the council will impose economic sanctions. No council species will trade with Earth. Your colonies will be isolated. Your ships will be denied access to council space, which includes 90% of explored territory. You will be cut off from galactic civilization until you comply. Lisa took a slow breath. In her ear, a tiny communication device whispered updates from Earth. Military forces were moving into position. Diplomatic channels were being closed. Everything was ready. Council Speaker, Lisa said, her voice steady. I need to make something very clear. New Terra is a human colony, established by human pioneers built with human resources. We owe the council nothing. We will not abandon our people, and we will not submit to taxation for territory we rightfully claimed. The chamber exploded with outraged sounds. Several council members stood, gesturing angrily. One representative, a being that looked like a collection of floating crystals, actually flickered red with fury. Zarthon raised both hands this time, calling for silence. When the chamber quieted, he stared at Lisa with something approaching pity. Ambassador, I don't think you understand the gravity of your situation. The council has crushed species far older and more powerful than humanity. We have maintained order in this galaxy for 10 millennia. We do not make idle threats. Neither do we, Lisa said. Something in her tone made Zarthon pause. For the first time in the meeting, Lisa saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Are you suggesting, Zarthon said slowly, that humanity would go to war with the council? I'm suggesting, Lisa replied, that if you attempt to enforce these demands through military action, you will be declaring war on humanity. And I promise you, Council Speaker, that is a mistake you will not survive. The chamber fell completely silent. In 10,000 years of council history, no species had ever spoken such words. War was something that happened to primitive species, not to civilized ones. The council maintained peace through overwhelming force and the threat of isolation. No rational species would choose conflict over cooperation. Zarthon studied Lisa for a long moment. Then he smiled, a gesture that didn't quite work on his alien features. Ambassador Grant, I appreciate your passion. Truly, I do, but you're bluffing. Humanity has 150 military vessels. The Council can mobilize 500 warships within a week. Your technology is decades behind ours. Your species has no experience with interstellar warfare. You would be crushed within days. Perhaps, Lisa said. Or perhaps you should ask yourself why a species as young and inexperienced as humanity would dare to defy you. What do we know that you don't? That gave Zarthon pause again. Lisa could see him thinking, considering. The Council had survived for so long because they weren't stupid. They were cautious, methodical. But they were also arrogant. 10,000 years of unopposed rule had made them believe they were invincible. You're gambling with billions of lives, Zarthon said finally. Human lives. Your people will suffer if you choose this path. Our people will suffer if we submit to tyranny, Lisa replied. Humanity didn't claw its way from caves to the stars just to bow before a council of bureaucrats. We fought too hard for our freedom to give it away now. Another council member stood. This one was short and covered in brown fur with 6 arms and a face like a bear. His translation device identified him as Representative Cormel of the Tarkesh species. With respect, Ambassador, Cormel said, your species has been at peace for over a century. You don't understand war. Not real war. The Council has maintained galactic peace precisely because we remember what war costs. We won't allow chaos to return to civilized space. Lisa turned to face Cormel directly. You're right that humanity has been at peace for a century. But before that, we spent 10,000 years at war. With ourselves. With our environment. With everything that tried to kill us on our world. We didn't stop fighting because we forgot how. We stopped because we chose to. But we never forgot the lessons. Ancient history, Cormel said dismissively. Your weapons are old. Your tactics are outdated. You can't win. We don't need to win, Lisa said quietly. We just need to make you regret starting the fight. Zarthon stood again. Enough of this posturing. Ambassador Grant, the Council gives you 72 hours to present humanity's formal response. You may return to Earth and consult with your government. But understand this. If humanity refuses our terms, the enforcement fleet will be deployed. This is not a negotiation. This is the law, Lisa nodded slowly. She touched her communication device, transmitting a coded message. Light years away, Captain Jake Morrison would receive it within minutes. The message was simple. Protocol Omega, they chose war. Council Speaker, Lisa said. I already have my government's response, but I'll give you 72 hours as a courtesy. Use that time to reconsider, because once the shooting starts, it won't stop until one of us surrenders, and humans are very, very stubborn. She turned and walked toward the exit. The council members watched her go, some confused, some angry, most simply dismissive. They had dealt with defiant species before. It always ended the same way. Compliance or destruction. As Lisa reached the door, Zarthon called out, Ambassador Grant, one more thing. She paused and looked back. I've studied your species, Zarthon said. Your history, your wars, your violence. I understand why you think you can fight us. But you're making a fundamental error. You're judging us by your standards. We're not warriors, Ambassador. We're administrators. We maintain order. And order always defeats chaos. Lisa smiled, and there was no warmth in it. You're right, Council Speaker. We are judging you by our standards. That's what should terrify you. She left the chamber. Behind her, the council members began debating among themselves, their voices rising in a cacophony of languages and opinions. But the debate was largely for show. The decision had already been made. The enforcement fleet would be mobilized. Humanity would be taught a lesson. In a small shuttle returning to her ship, Lisa sat alone and removed her formal jacket. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. From anger. From the weight of what she had just done. She had tried diplomacy for 8 years, tried to find a peaceful solution. But the council only understood submission. Her communication device chimed. A message from Earth, from General Frank Hayes himself. Just 3 words. We're ready, Lisa. She closed her eyes and thought about New Terra, about the families. The enforcement fleet began assembling at staging point Delta 7, a region of space chosen for its strategic position near human territory. 500 warships gathered in formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of a distant star. Each vessel represented a council member species, from the massive dreadnoughts of the Velik to the swift cruisers of the Tarkesh. Together they formed the largest military force assembled in over 2,000 years. Fleet Admiral Carthan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the council vessel, Eternal Justice. He was a career military officer, though in truth his career had consisted mostly of ceremonial duties and the occasional show of force against minor pirate groups. Real war was something he had only studied in history files. The council had not fought a genuine conflict since before he was born. Status report, Carthan commanded. His tactical officer, a young Velik named Soral, consulted his displays. All vessels report ready, Admiral. Weapons systems armed, shields at full power. The fleet awaits your command. Carthan nodded with satisfaction. 500 ships. The humans had barely 150 vessels in their entire navy, and most of those were exploratory craft converted for military use. This would not be a battle. It would be a demonstration. Open a channel to all ships, Carthan ordered. Prepare for jump to human space. We'll arrive at their outer colonies and give them one final chance to surrender. After that, we proceed with enforcement protocols. Soral hesitated. Admiral, our intelligence reports are limited. We don't know much about human military capabilities. What's to know? Carthan replied. They're primitives with primitive weapons. Our shields can withstand anything they might throw at us. This will be over before it begins. Soral didn't look convinced, but he returned to his station without further comment. Around the bridge, other officers prepared for the jump. None of them looked worried. Why would they? The council had never lost. Meanwhile, in human space, a very different scene was unfolding. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the briefing room of the Terran Defiant, addressing his senior officers. The room was plain and functional, with metal walls and simple seating. Humans didn't waste resources on decoration when function mattered more. Intelligence confirms the enforcement fleet has assembled, Jake said, bringing up a holographic display. 500 ships just like we predicted. They're staging at Delta 7, which means they'll jump to our outer territories within 12 hours. Commander Amy Walsh leaned forward, studying the display. She was Jake's tactical officer, a woman with 20 years of military experience. Her short dark hair and scarred hands told the story of someone who had fought her way up through the ranks. 500 against our 150, Amy said. Those aren't good odds even for us. They would be if this was a fair fight, Jake replied with a slight smile. But we're not interested in fair. We're interested in winning. A young officer raised his hand. Lieutenant Ben Cole, fresh out of the academy but eager to prove himself. Captain, I don't understand. If they outnumber us 3-1, how can we possibly win? Jake looked at Ben for a moment, then gestured to the holographic display. Lieutenant, what do you see when you look at this fleet? Ben studied the formation. 500 warships arranged in standard council formation. Heavy ships in the center, fast attack craft on the flanks, support vessels in the rear. Exactly, Jake said. Standard formation. Standard tactics. Standard thinking. The council has been using the same military doctrine for thousands of years because it's always worked. They've never needed to adapt, Amy picked up the explanation. The council fights wars through intimidation. They show up with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and their enemies cave. They haven't fought a real battle in recorded history. But we have, Jake said quietly. Humanity spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves. World wars, regional conflicts, guerrilla warfare, naval battles, air superiority, ground campaigns. We wrote books on warfare. We studied it. We perfected it. And when we finally achieved peace, we didn't forget those lessons. We just stopped using them on each other. Ben's eyes widened with understanding. So while they were maintaining peace, we were preparing for war. Not preparing, Jake corrected. Evolution. Every human military academy still teaches the campaigns of ancient Earth. We study victories and defeats. We analyze tactics and counter-tactics. War is in our cultural memory. It's in our DNA. Amy activated another display showing the human fleet disposition. We've spent the last 30 years developing weapons specifically designed to counter council technology. They have powerful shields but slow weapons. We have fast weapons that can overwhelm shields through volume of fire. They have massive ships built for intimidation. We have small maneuverable vessels built for actual combat. Our fighters can operate independently, Jake continued. Council fighters need carrier support. Our ships have redundant systems and damage control teams. Council ships rely on their shields because they never expect to take hits. We've gamed out every possible scenario and they don't even know we've been watching them. Another officer spoke up. An older woman named Captain Sarah Blake. She commanded one of the other vessels in the human fleet. What about their numbers advantage? Even with better tactics, 500 ships can put out a lot of firepower. Jake smiled. That's where the real surprise comes in. They're expecting us to meet them in open battle. They think we'll form up and exchange fire like gentlemen. But we're not gentlemen, Captain. We're humans. He changed the display to show a complex tactical overlay. We're not going to fight them ship to ship. We're going to use every advantage we have. Stealth technology they don't know we possess. Hit-and-run tactics. Targeting their command structure and logistics. We're going to fight dirty, and they won't know what hit them. Amy pulled up detailed schematics of council ships. We've been studying their vessels for decades. Every class, every model. We know their weak points. Engine vulnerabilities. Shield generators. Communication arrays. We know exactly where to hit them to cause maximum damage with minimum ammunition. Ben was taking notes furiously. So we're not trying to destroy the entire fleet. We're trying to break their will to fight. Exactly, Jake confirmed. The Council has never faced determined resistance. When they realize we're not backing down, when they start taking serious casualties, they'll fall apart. They're administrators, not warriors. They'll run. The room fell silent as the officers absorbed this information. Finally, Sarah spoke again. And if they don't run? If they decide to fight to the bitter end? Jake's expression hardened. Then we show them what humanity looks like when we're fighting for our survival. We hold nothing back. We use every weapon, every tactic, every advantage we have. Because this isn't about territory or taxes. This is about whether humanity gets to determine its own future. Across human space, similar briefings were taking place on every military vessel. Thousands of crew members were being told the same thing. The fight was coming, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. On Earth, General Frank Hayes stood in the command center deep beneath the military headquarters. Screens surrounded him, displaying the position of every human ship, every colony, every asset. He had spent 40 years in service, rising through the ranks, and now he held the responsibility for all of human military operations. General, we're receiving confirmation from all fleet elements, an aide reported. Every ship is in position and ready. Frank nodded slowly. He thought about the Council, about their arrogance and their certainty. They thought humanity was primitive. They thought 80 years in space made humans children. They had no idea. Send the final authorization codes, Frank ordered, and transmit this message to all commands. Make them understand what we're fighting for. He composed the message carefully, knowing that thousands of people would read his words in the coming hours. To all personnel. In a few hours we will engage the Council enforcement fleet. They outnumber us. They have older technology and more resources. By conventional standards, we should lose this fight. But we're not conventional, and we're not going to lose. We're fighting for something they can't understand. Freedom, self-determination, the right to exist on our own terms. Our ancestors fought and died for these principles on Earth. They faced impossible odds and won because they refused to surrender. We carry that legacy with us now. The Council thinks we're weak. Let's show them what humanity really is. Hayes out. In her laboratory complex on Mars, Dr. Helen Brooks was putting the finishing touches on the latest batch of missiles. She had spent 20 years developing weapon systems, always with the knowledge that someday they would be needed. That day had arrived. Her assistant, a young engineer named Peter Grant, looked worried. Doctor, do you think this will work? The Council has shields that can withstand nuclear detonations. Helen smiled grimly. Their shields work on a specific frequency, designed to deflect energy weapons. These missiles use kinetic penetrators backed by nuclear warheads. The penetrators punch through the shield and the nuke does the rest. They've never seen anything like it because energy weapons are considered more civilized. And we're not civilized? Peter asked. We're civilized enough to want peace, Helen replied. But barbaric? The enforcement fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 500 warships materialized in the darkness of space. their running lights creating a constellation of artificial stars. Admiral Carr then stood on the bridge of the Eternal Justice, expecting to see panicked human vessels scrambling to respond. Instead, he saw nothing. "Tactical report," Carthan commanded. Soral studied his displays with growing confusion. "Admiral, sensors show minimal activity. We're detecting only 15 human vessels in the immediate area. All appear to be civilian transports or small patrol craft." 15? Carthan frowned. "Intelligence reported at least 150 military vessels." "Where are they?" "Unknown, sir. Either our intelligence was wrong or they've withdrawn." Carthan felt a moment of satisfaction. The humans had seen the size of the enforcement fleet and run. This would be easier than anticipated. "Hail the human vessels. Inform them we're here to enforce council authority. They are to stand down and prepare for inspection." The communication officer opened a channel. Moments later, a response came through. It was a young human male appearing on the main screen. He wore a simple uniform and looked remarkably calm for someone facing 500 warships. "This is Lieutenant Ben Cole of the human patrol vessel Swift Current," the young man said. "You've entered human territory without authorization. Please state your intentions." Carthan almost laughed. "Lieutenant, I am Fleet Admiral Carthan of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. We are here to ensure compliance with Council directives. Your government has been given ample opportunity to surrender peacefully. Since they have refused, we are here to enforce the Council's will." Ben's expression didn't change. "Admiral, I'm required to inform you that any hostile action against human vessels or territory will be considered an act of war. You have 10 minutes to withdraw before we respond with force." This time Carthan did laugh, and he heard similar sounds from officers around the bridge. "Lieutenant, I appreciate your courage, but look at your sensors. We have 500 warships. You have 15 small craft. What exactly do you think you can do?" Ben smiled slightly. "I guess we'll find out. Your 10 minutes starts now." The transmission ended. Carthan shook his head in amazement. These humans had spirit, he had to give them that. Foolish spirit, but spirit nonetheless. "Admiral," Soral said, "what are your orders?" "Fire a warning shot across the bow of that patrol vessel," Carthan ordered. "Let's see if they're still brave when they see our weapons." The Eternal Justice's main cannon powered up, a massive energy weapon that could vaporize a small moon. It fired, a brilliant beam of light that streaked across space and passed within a few hundred meters of the Swift Current. The little patrol vessel didn't move. "Direct hit capability confirmed," the weapons officer reported. "Their vessel took no evasive action." "Because they know evasion is pointless," Carthan said. "Open another channel. Tell them this is their last chance." Before the communication could be established, every alarm on the bridge began screaming simultaneously. "Multiple contacts," Soral shouted. "They're appearing all around us." Sensors show, wait, this can't be right. Over 100 human vessels just appeared within firing range. Carthan stared at the tactical display in shock. The empty space around his fleet was suddenly full of red, hostile markers. Human warships had appeared seemingly from nowhere, surrounding the enforcement fleet. "How is this possible?" Carthan demanded. "We would have detected them approaching." "Unknown, sir. They must have some kind of stealth technology. They were there the whole time, we just couldn't see them." On the Terran Defiant, Captain Jake Morrison watched his tactical display with satisfaction. Every human ship had been holding position with their stealth systems active, waiting for the perfect moment. The Council fleet had walked right into the trap. "All ships, this is Morrison," Jake said calmly. "Weapons free. Execute attack pattern Delta. Target their command vessels first." Commander Amy Walsh was already coordinating the attack. "Targeting solutions locked. All ships report ready. Firing in 3, 2, 1, mark." The human fleet opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of missiles streaked through space, followed by railgun rounds moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The Council ships, designed for ceremonial displays and intimidation, had never been built to withstand a real military assault. The first volley struck the Eternal Justice and 3 other command ships. The Council shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, did nothing against solid projectiles moving at tremendous velocity. The railgun rounds punched through the shields like they weren't there, tearing into hulls. Milliseconds later, nuclear warheads detonated inside the breaches. 4 Council command ships exploded in brilliant fireballs. The Eternal Justice survived the initial hit, but its bridge was gone, along with Admiral Carthan and his entire senior staff. "They're firing back," someone shouted on the Defiant's bridge. Council ships began returning fire, their energy weapons lighting up space. But their targeting systems were designed for slow-moving targets, not the fast, maneuverable human vessels. Most shots missed completely. The few that connected hit shields that had been specifically designed to defend against energy weapons. Shields holding at 90%, Amy reported. Their weapons are exactly as predicted. Low power, slow cycling rate. We can absorb dozens of hits before we're in danger. Jake opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships execute evasive pattern theta. Don't give them stationary targets. Hit and fade. Keep moving. The human ships began a complex dance through space, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. They would appear, fire a devastating volley, then vanish back into stealth. The Council ships, locked in their traditional formations, couldn't adapt. Lieutenant Ben Cole was piloting his fighter through the chaos, his heart pounding with adrenaline. He had trained for this, but training couldn't prepare you for the reality. Explosions everywhere, debris flying, ships dying. Swift Wing, form up on me, he called to his squadron. We're going for that carrier group at coordinates 47 Alpha. His wingmen acknowledged, and the squadron dove toward a cluster of Council carriers. These massive ships were launching their own fighters, smaller craft that were supposed to provide a defensive screen, but the Council fighters were slow and clumsy compared to human designs. Ben's targeting computer locked onto the first carrier's hangar bay. It was wide open, fighters streaming out like insects from a hive. He armed his missiles and fired, sending 4 warheads streaking toward the opening. The missiles hit perfectly, detonating inside the hangar. Secondary explosions rippled through the carrier as fuel and ammunition cooked off. The massive ship began breaking apart. That's one, Ben shouted, moving to the next target. His squadron followed him through a series of evasive maneuvers, dodging fire from Council point defense systems. They hit the second carrier with railgun fire, stitching a line of destruction across its hull. The third carrier tried to close its hangar bays, but it was too late. Ben's missiles were already inside. Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out. Human ships were systematically dismantling the Council fleet with surgical precision. Every weakness that had been studied for decades was being exploited. Engine clusters were targeted and destroyed. Shield generators were overwhelmed and taken offline. Communication arrays were blown apart, leaving Council ships unable to coordinate. On one of the surviving Council ships, Captain Velkos was experiencing genuine fear for the first time in his life. He was a Tarkesh officer, trained in the finest Council academies. He had always believed in Council superiority, but watching his fleet die around him, he realized they had made a terrible mistake. All power to shields, Velkos shouted. Get us out of here. But his ship's faster-than-light drive had been damaged in the first strike. They were trapped in normal space, unable to flee. Another human volley struck his vessel, and he felt the deck shake beneath his feet. Shield Generator 2 is offline. We're losing structural integrity on decks 5 through 9. Velkos looked at his tactical display. Of the 500 ships that had jumped into human space, less than 300 were still operational. And the battle had been going for less than 30 minutes. Send a distress call to the Council, he ordered. Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them the humans are not what we thought. Jake watched the battle from the Defiance Bridge. The tactical display showed the Council fleet in complete disarray. Ships were attempting to flee, but human vessels were cutting off escape routes. Others were trying to rally, but without their command structure, they had no coordination. Commander Walsh, status report, Jake said. Amy consulted her displays. Enemy fleet is down to 280 operational vessels. We've lost 3 ships destroyed, 11 damaged. Casualty reports are still coming in, but it's less than projected. They're breaking formation, another officer reported. Multiple vessels attempting to disengage. Jake nodded. Let them go. We're not here to genocide the Council. We're here to teach them a lesson. All ships, cease fire on any vessel that disengages and withdraws from human space. The order went out, and gradually the firing began to slow. Council ships. The Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 47 species argued simultaneously, their voices creating a cacophony that translation devices struggled to interpret. Council Speaker Zarthon tried repeatedly to restore order, but no one was listening. They were too busy panicking. The destruction of the enforcement fleet had shattered something fundamental in galactic civilization. For 10,000 years, the Council's word had been absolute law. Now, a species barely 80 years removed from their homeworld had proven that law could be defied. Worse, they had proven it could be defeated. This cannot stand, roared Representative Cormul, slamming 3 of his 6 fists on his desk. The Tarkesh Confederation will mobilize our full military. We will show these humans the price of defiance. The Tarkesh military consists of 40 ships, Elder Counselor Mirasol said dryly. The enforcement fleet had 500, and look what happened to them. Then we mobilize everyone, another representative shouted. Every species contributes their forces. We can field 3,000 ships, maybe more. The humans cannot defeat those numbers. Zarthon finally succeeded in calling for order. When the chamber quieted somewhat, he spoke carefully. Representatives, please. We must think clearly. Ambassador Grant gave us 24 hours to respond. That time has almost expired. We need to make a decision. The decision is obvious, Cormul growled. We fight. We mobilize every available ship and crush them. We cannot allow this rebellion to succeed, or every species in the galaxy will think they can defy us. Mirasol shook her head slowly. You still don't understand what we're facing. I've been studying their history, their culture. These humans come from a world that tried to kill them at every turn. They survived ice ages, mass extinctions, diseases that should have wiped them out. And when they weren't fighting their environment, they were fighting each other. She pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's history. Images of ancient battles, world wars, technological evolution driven by military necessity. For 10,000 years, humans practiced warfare on an industrial scale. They developed strategies and tactics we've never imagined because we've never needed them. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons. They brought themselves to the brink of extinction multiple times and somehow stepped back each time, but they never forgot how to fight. Ancient history, Cormul dismissed. They've been at peace for a century. They've been preparing, Mirasol corrected. Every human child learns military history. Every human officer studies campaigns from their past. War is part of their cultural identity in ways we cannot comprehend. They stopped fighting each other, but they never stopped preparing to fight someone. Zarthon listened with growing unease. He had authorized the enforcement fleet deployment believing it would be a simple police action. Instead, it had become the worst military disaster in Council history. What do you recommend, Elder Counselor? He asked. Mirasol was silent for a long moment. I recommend we accept their terms. Recognize human independence. Withdraw from their space, and pray they're satisfied with that. The chamber erupted again. Representatives shouted about honor and precedent and authority. But beneath the anger, Zarthon could hear fear. While the council argued, humanity was already moving. General Frank Hayes stood in the command center on Earth, watching as human fleets deployed across the galaxy. The victory at the frontier had been decisive, but he knew the council wouldn't give up so easily. They would escalate, and humanity needed to be ready. Status of Operation Scorched Earth? Frank asked. His chief of staff, Colonel Sarah Blake, consulted her displays. All strike groups are in position. We've identified 47 high-value targets. Space stations, trading hubs, resource extraction facilities. All are in Council territory. All are legitimate military targets. None have significant civilian populations. Frank nodded. He had spent weeks planning this operation, hoping he would never need to execute it. But the Council needed to understand that human warnings were not bluffs. How long until their deadline expires? 17 minutes, sir? And no word from the Council? Nothing official. Our intelligence indicates they're still arguing among themselves, Frank sighed. He thought about all the people who would be affected by what he was about to do. Council workers at those stations, traders and merchants, ordinary people just trying to live their lives. But he also thought about human colonists on New Terra, the children growing up under alien skies, the millions of humans who depended on his decisions to keep them free. Send the authorization codes, Frank ordered. If we don't hear from the Council in 17 minutes, Operation Scorched Earth goes active. Across the galaxy, human strike groups received their orders. Small teams of stealth ships, each carrying enough firepower to cripple a space station. They moved into position silently, waiting. Captain Jake Morrison was leading one such group. The Terran Defiant and 5 escort vessels were approaching a major Council trading station in neutral space. The station, called Haven Point, was a massive structure that processed raw materials from a dozen systems. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the station. his communication officer reported. "They're asking us to state our business." Jake opened the channel.
Haven Point Control, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Fleet.
"We're here to deliver a message." The station controller appeared on screen, a nervous-looking Velik. "Captain, we're a civilian station. We have no military forces here. Whatever dispute you have with the Council, we're not involved." "I understand that," Jake said, "and that's why I'm giving you this warning. In approximately 15 minutes, if the Council has not agreed to peace terms, we will destroy this station. You have that time to evacuate all personnel." The controller's face went pale. "Destroy? Captain, there are over 10,000 workers here. We can't evacuate that many people in 15 minutes. "Then you'd better start trying," Jake said firmly. "I don't want to hurt anyone. But this station processes materials that support Council military operations. That makes it a legitimate target. Get your people to the escape pods now." He closed the channel. Around him, his bridge crew sat silently. Commander Amy Walsh looked troubled. "Captain, are we really going to do this?" she asked quietly. Jake stared at the station on his display. "I hope not. I hope the Council comes to their senses in the next 15 minutes. But if they don't, yes, we do this. There are families on that station, I know. And there are families on New Terra. Families on every human colony. This is war, Amy. It's ugly and it's terrible, but we didn't start it. The Council needs to understand that we're serious, that we won't back down." On Haven Point, alarms were screaming. Station Manager Telvar was coordinating the fastest evacuation in Council history. 10,000 people trying to reach escape pods simultaneously. It was chaos. "Move! Move!" Telvar shouted. "Everyone to the nearest pod. Don't take anything, just go." People ran through corridors, pushing and shoving. Parents carried children. Workers abandoned their posts. The entire station was emptying in a panicked rush. Telvar reached the command center and checked the countdown. 12 minutes remaining. They weren't going to make it. There were too many people, too few pods. He opened a channel to the human ship. "Captain Morrison, we need more time." "Please, we're trying, but there are children here." Jake's face appeared on the screen. Telvar could see the conflict in the human's eyes. "I'm sorry. I truly am. But I have my orders. You have 12 minutes. Use them." The channel closed. Telvar wanted to scream, to rage, to demand justice. But there was no time. He went back to coordinating the evacuation, praying they could save everyone. In the Council chamber, the arguing had finally stopped. The representatives had received reports from all 47 targeted locations. Human fleets were in position. Evacuations were underway. "The humans were actually going to do it. This is madness," Cormel shouted. "They're threatening civilian installations." "They're threatening military support infrastructure," Mirasol corrected. "And they gave warnings. They're trying to minimize casualties. But they will pull the trigger if we don't respond." Zarthon looked at the clock. 8 minutes remaining. He had to make a decision. The weight of 10,000 years of Council authority pressed down on him. If he gave in, if he accepted human terms, the Council would never be the same. Every species would see that defiance was possible, but if he refused, those stations would be destroyed. Thousands would die, and the war would continue, spreading across the galaxy. "I need to speak with Ambassador Grant," Zarthon said suddenly. Lisa was brought to the chamber. She looked tired but determined. "Council Speaker, have you made a decision?" "I need to understand," Zarthon said. "What do your people want, truly?" Lisa met his gaze steadily. "We want what every species wants, freedom, the right to determine our own future. We don't want to conquer you. We don't want to destroy the Council. We just want to be left alone. But you're willing to go to war for that?" "We're willing to defend it, yes. Humans learned a long time ago that freedom isn't free. It has to be fought for, protected, sometimes at great cost. We've paid that cost before. We'll pay it again if we must." Zarthon looked around the chamber at his fellow Council members. 6 months had passed since the Council broadcast their surrender. 6 months since the galaxy changed forever. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood once again in the Council chamber, but this time everything was different. The seating arrangement had been altered. Where once the Council members sat in a perfect circle around a central platform, now the circle included an additional seat, the human seat, equal to all others. Lisa wore the same diplomatic uniform, but she carried herself differently now. Not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had proven their worth. Around her, the council members watched with expressions ranging from respect to lingering resentment. Council Speaker Zarthon called the assembly to order. His voice had changed too. Less commanding, more collaborative. The council had learned humility the hard way. Representatives, we gather today to finalize the Treaty of Terra Nova. This document will establish the formal relationship between the Galactic Council and the human species. Ambassador Grant, would you like to present the final terms? Lisa activated a holographic display showing the treaty document. It had taken months of negotiation, compromise, and occasionally heated debate. But they had reached an agreement that both sides could accept. The treaty establishes several key principles. Lisa began. First, humanity is recognized as a fully sovereign species with complete independence from council governance. Our colonies, our laws, our future are ours to determine. Several council members nodded. This part had been the easiest to agree upon. After the war, no one was willing to challenge human independence. Second, humanity will hold a permanent seat on the council with full voting rights, including veto power on any measures that affect human interests. We will participate in galactic governance as equals, not as subjects. This had been more controversial. Representative Cornwall had argued loudly that humans should earn their place over decades, not demand it immediately. But Elder Counselor Mirasol had pointed out that humans had already earned it through force of arms. Better to grant it willingly than have it taken. Third, the Council formally acknowledges responsibility for initiating hostilities. Reparations will be paid to families of human casualties and to colonies affected by the conflict. Zarthon winced slightly at this. The reparations weren't large by galactic standards, but the symbolic weight of the Council admitting fault was enormous. It had never happened before in 10,000 years. Fourth, and most importantly, the Council agrees to reduce its military forces by 60%. The remaining forces will be reorganized into a true defensive fleet, not an enforcement mechanism for political will. This was the part that had caused the most argument. Many council members feared leaving themselves vulnerable, but General Frank Hayes had made the reality clear during negotiations. The Council's old military hadn't been able to defeat humanity. Building a bigger version of the same thing wouldn't help. Better to have smaller, more professional forces focused on actual defense against external threats. Finally, Lisa concluded, humanity agrees to share defensive technology and tactical training with Council forces. We will help you build a real military, one capable of protecting the galaxy from genuine threats, not from dissent but from danger. She deactivated the display and looked around the chamber. This treaty isn't about winners and losers. It's about creating a better system, one where all species have a voice, where strength is used for protection, not oppression, where governance comes from consent, not fear. Cornwall stood, his multiple arms crossed. Ambassador Grant, you speak well of cooperation now. But 6 months ago, your people destroyed 200 council ships, killed thousands of our personnel. How do we know you won't turn on us again? Lisa met his gaze calmly. Representative Cornwall, we destroyed those ships because we were defending our freedom. If you threaten that freedom again, yes, we'll fight again. But if you respect our sovereignty, if you treat us as equals, you'll find humans make excellent allies. We're loyal to our friends. We just don't tolerate bullies. Mirasol spoke up, her ancient voice carrying authority. I support the treaty. Humanity has proven they can wage war. Now they're offering to help us build peace. We should accept with gratitude. The vote was called. Of the 47 council species, 41 voted in favor. 5 abstained. Only Cornwall voted against, and even he looked like he was just making a point rather than seriously opposing. The treaty is ratified, Zarthon announced. Welcome, Ambassador Grant, to your permanent seat on the Galactic Council. Lisa moved from the central platform to her new seat. It felt strange, sitting among beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, but it also felt right. Humanity had earned this place. On Earth, celebrations erupted when the news arrived. General Frank Hayes watched the crowds in the streets, people laughing and crying and embracing. They had been prepared for a long war. Instead, they got peace and recognition, but Frank knew the hard work was just beginning. Winning the war had been the easy part. Building the peace would take decades. General Captain Morrison is here to see you, his aide announced. Jake walked into Frank's office looking more relaxed than he had in months. The Terran Defiant was in space dock for repairs and upgrades. Jake had been offered a promotion to Admiral, but he'd turned it down. He preferred commanding a ship to pushing papers. "Jake, good to see you," Frank said, shaking his hand. "What brings you to headquarters?" "Just wanted to thank you, sir, for trusting us, for letting us do what needed to be done." Frank smiled. "You earned that trust. The Battle of the Frontier will be studied in military academies for centuries. You and your crew showed the galaxy what humans can do." "We showed them what humans will do when pushed," Jake corrected. "But I'm hoping we won't need to do it again." "That's up to the Council, and to us we need to prove we're more than just warriors." Jake nodded. "Commander Walsh is already working on that. She's been assigned to the Council Military Liaison Office. She'll be training their forces in modern combat doctrine, helping them build something actually capable of defense." "And Lieutenant Cole?" "Ben's getting his own command. A new frigate, the Defiance. He earned it. That kid flew through hell and came out the other side." Frank leaned back in his chair. "What about you, Jake? What's next for the captain who won the war?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "I'm thinking about that academy position you mentioned. Teaching the next generation, making sure they understand that victory isn't just about tactics and weapons. It's about knowing why you're fighting. That's a good choice. We need people like you shaping the future." They talked for another hour, two warriors reflecting on what they'd been through and what came next. When Jake finally left, Frank sat alone in his office thinking about the weight of history. Humanity had taken its place on the galactic stage. Not through diplomacy or trade or cultural exchange, but through war. That was a sobering reality. But perhaps it was the only way. The Council had ruled through fear for so long. Only a greater fear could break their grip. In the Council military headquarters, Commander Amy Walsh was conducting her first training session with Council forces. 50 officers from various species sat before her, listening intently. "The first thing you need to understand," Amy said, "is that your old doctrine was designed to intimidate, not to fight. That's why you lost. Real military force isn't about having the biggest ships or the most impressive displays. It's about coordination, adaptability, and the willingness to take casualties to achieve objectives." A Valak officer raised his hand. "Commander Walsh, your forces took significant casualties in the battle. How did you maintain morale?" "Because we knew what we were fighting for," Amy replied. "Every human ship in that battle was crewed by volunteers. People who believed in the cause strongly enough to risk their lives. You can't force that kind of commitment. You have to earn it." Over the next weeks and months, Amy worked with Council forces to completely restructure their military. Smaller ships, more maneuverable, better weapons, faster reaction times, most importantly, better training. Council officers learned to think like warriors instead of administrators, and slowly, grudgingly, they began to respect their human teacher. Lieutenant Ben Cole stood on the bridge of his new command, the Defiance. It was smaller than the Terran Defiant, a frigate rather than a cruiser, but it was his. His crew his responsibility. "Captain on the bridge," someone called as he entered. "Captain." It still felt strange. 6 months ago, he'd been a junior officer flying a patrol craft. Now he commanded a warship and a crew of 200. "Status report," Ben ordered, settling into the command chair. "All systems green, Captain. We're cleared for departure. Take us out. Set course for the frontier. I want to see how our new partnership with the Council is working out there." The Defiance undocked smoothly and accelerated away from Earth. Ben watched his home world shrink in the view screen. Somewhere down there, his family was watching, proud and terrified in equal measure. He thought about everything that had happened. The war, the battle, the victory. He'd killed people in that fight. Council personnel who were just following orders, doing what they thought was right. That weight would stay with him forever, but he'd also saved